Russia's latest tactic? Glide bombs. Because when you're running low on strategy, you throw bombs from afar and hope for the best. Sure, they can drop these bombs from within their own borders, but that just shows how afraid they are to step into the real fight. But Ukraine, they're not playing defense anymore. After months of dealing with these distant strikes, Ukraine has had enough. They're not only holding their ground, they're flipping the script. Now Ukraine is using the same glide bomb tactics, striking back with their own advanced weaponry and turning the tables on Russia. Russia thought they could break Ukraine. Now they're the ones being hunted. Let's dive into how Ukraine has mastered this new age of warfare and is taking the fight straight to Russia's doorstep. Let's start with the Russian glide bombs. Glide bombs are precision-guided munitions designed for long-range strikes, transforming standard air-dropped bombs into lethal weapons capable of engaging targets from a distance. Unlike traditional bombs that require aircraft to fly directly over their targets, glide bombs are equipped with wings and guidance systems, allowing them to glide toward their targets after being released from aircraft at significant altitudes. It was the Soviet Union, Russia's predecessor, that managed to develop the glide bomb technology, focusing on developing the FAB family of bombs. FAB is an acronym that translates to High Explosive Aviation Bombs, and a bomb from this family, the FAB 500 M62, has actually been one of the ones to leave whole parts of Ukrainian cities in ruins. The name of this bomb itself gives us a glimpse into its formidable capabilities. The number 500 indicates the bomb's weight, 500 kilograms or approximately 1,100 pounds. As for the M62 part, it indicates the year this bomb was produced, 1962. But the bombs devastating Ukraine aren't the same ones originally produced by the Soviet Union. No, those bombs were so-called dumb bombs, which means they were unguided munitions designed to be dropped directly onto a target from a bomber. The new and improved FAB 500 features a unified gliding and correction module, or UMPK for short, a guidance system and gliding function that essentially transforms ordinary aerial bombs into glide bombs with longer range and more accurate strike capabilities. This is made possible by the integrated GPS tracker, stabilizing fins, and deployable wings, which allow the bomb to glide for considerable distances, up to 40 miles, before making impact. This transformative upgrade reportedly costs around $25,000, making it a significantly cheaper alternative compared to cruise and ballistic missiles, which can run into millions of dollars. Simply put, these bombs were inexpensive yet destructive. In fact, when it comes to these bombs, even using the word destruction might seem like an understatement. The FAB 1500, for instance, is nicknamed the Building Destroyer for a reason. This monster weighs a staggering 1.5 tons and can generate an explosive power far exceeding that of traditional artillery. Even worse, Moscow has already announced plans to create an even bigger glide bomb, the 3.4-ton FAB 3000, as well as a new variety, the Drel, set to contain cluster munitions. This only proves that Russia is hell-bent on escalating its brutality. The existing glide bombs are compatible with 4++ and 5th-generation aircraft, which makes the Sukhoi Su-34M fighter bomber the primary carrier for these munitions in the Russian Air Force. The bombs are strapped to hard points under the wings of the aircraft, comparable to the American Douglas F-15E Strike Eagle, and dropped on their targets with the Russian pilots never crossing into Ukrainian airspace. But when were these beasts first dropped in Ukraine? Let's look at the timeline of the Russo-Ukrainian glide bomb war. March 2023. In the dark hours heading into March 24th, the quiet of Sumy Oblast, a province in northeast Ukraine, was shattered by the roar of Russian aircraft overhead. These jets released 11 munitions, later identified as the modified FAB 500 bombs. This was the first time smart glide bombs were used in Ukraine. However, Ukraine had no plans to simply accept this new wave of destruction. The country was working on securing its very own glide bombs, the JDAM-ERs or Joint Direct Attack Munitions, jointly developed by the US Air Force and Navy. Though these bombs resemble their Russian counterparts, they're far more sophisticated. Their goal has always been the same: to conduct low-risk, high-reward strikes while minimizing collateral damage, something Russia knows nothing about. The version of these precision-guided munitions that arrived in Ukraine was the JDAM-ER Extended Range, an advanced air-launched, precision-guided bomb featuring a supplemental wing kit. This upgraded design allows the JDAM-ER to strike targets from an impressive distance of up to 45 miles, which represents a significant leap from the original JDAM's range of about 15 miles, effectively tripling its standoff capability. The JDAM is known for its remarkable accuracy, striking within a few yards of its target. Its fire-and-forget capability allows the launch aircraft to immediately retreat after releasing the bomb, enhancing crew safety and survivability. In practical terms, this meant that Ukrainian pilots were able to engage high-value Russian targets such as command posts, munition depots, and other critical infrastructure from a safe distance, keeping them out of the lethal range of Russian air defenses. By March 31, 2023, Ukraine confirmed that the JDAM precision bombs were used in combat. Yuri Ignat, the spokesperson for the Air Force Command of the Ukrainian forces, was pretty direct about it. "We use JDAM bombs," was how he started his exposition. Ignat also said that these bombs are slightly less powerful, but that their accuracy makes them a formidable tool in the fight. While specifics on the types of JDAMs were scarce, speculation indicated that Ukraine might be using 500-pound or even 1,000-pound bomb bodies, rather than the more massive 2,000-pound versions, which is why Ignat referred to them as slightly less powerful. Reports also suggested that Ukraine had received only a limited supply of these bombs, enough for a few critical strikes. One of these strikes would come about a month later, during the Battle of Bakhmut, April 2023. The Battle of Bakhmut had been raging since early July 2022, evolving into one of the most intense confrontations of the Russo-Ukrainian war. By early 2023, the fighting had devolved into brutal urban warfare, with Ukrainian troops pushed back to defend the city's heart. On April 26th, amidst the chaos, the Ukrainian Air Force executed a precise attack. 2 MiG-29s ascended into the sky and dropped 4 500-pound GBU-62B JDAM glide bombs on a high-rise building in the Russian-controlled part of Bakhmut. The building in question was targeted to prevent it from being used as an observation post or fighting position. While the strike didn't shift the overall outcome of the battle, which ultimately saw Ukrainian forces losing control of Bakhmut, it showcased the effectiveness of precision bombing in the conflict and likely compelled Russian forces to adapt their tactics in response. That's probably why Russia used glide bombs in the next major conflict with the Ukrainian forces, the Battle of Avdiivka, January 2024. While Avdiivka has been a contested battleground since 2014, the latest Battle of Avdiivka began on February 24, 2022, with Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, it was in 2024 that Russian forces established limited air superiority and claimed victory, marking their first significant territorial gain in 9 months. Glide bombs were a huge part of this gain. In a decisive move, Russia unleashed a torrent of glide bombs on Ukrainian positions, exploiting their simplicity and cost-effectiveness. Reports indicated that Russian warplanes dropped over 600 FAB glide bombs on Avdiivka within a mere 4 weeks, devastating the city's defenses. The Institute for the Study of War noted that the increasing reliance on guided aerial bombs allowed Russian aviation to wipe out entrenched Ukrainian forces. The Battle of Avdiivka seemingly emboldened the Russians, who started to escalate their use of glide bombs with reckless abandon. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in March 2024 alone, Russia dropped over 3,000 glide bombs over Ukraine. In April 2024, another 3,200. To make matters worse, Russia started successfully jamming the US-supplied air-to-ground munitions, severely compromising Ukraine's defensive capabilities. But again, neither the US nor Ukraine sat idly by. So the US pushed to expedite the deployment of advanced weapons like the Ground-Launched Small Diameter Bomb, or GLSDB for short. This innovative weapon combined a precision-guided glide bomb, the GBU-39B, with a 227mm rocket motor, enabling ground launchers to strike from a range of approximately 93 miles. May 2024. The US continued to look for ways to help Ukraine win the devastating glide bomb war. The US Air Force started acquiring add-on seekers whose purpose was to enhance the JDAM-ER bombs supplied to Ukraine by enabling them to target GPS jammers directly. This move was another response to the growing concern that Russian jamming efforts would significantly undermine the effectiveness of Western-supplied GPS-guided munitions, including the JDAM-ERs. These advancements were as urgent as ever, as the efficiency of Western-supplied weapons like the Excalibur precision artillery rounds dropped from just 70% to 6% in a matter of weeks as Russian forces adapted their electronic warfare capabilities. Russia also started heavily relying on glide bombs in a new offensive launched on Kharkiv Oblast, a region in eastern Ukraine, using them to clear the way for ground troops. Reportedly, over 200 glide bombs were used within a week to target Vovchansk. The local police chief, Alexei Kharkivsky, described the aftermath of the attacks, highlighting the horrific impact on civilians. "Over the past 6 months, we were hit by glide bombs quite often, maybe 5 to 10 bombs per week, but this month we've had far more than ever," he shared, illustrating the escalating nature of the assault. As for Ukraine, the country started to strike back, targeting Russian positions in the Kherson Oblast in southern Ukraine. Fueled by an indomitable warrior spirit, Ukrainian forces unleashed the power of JDAM-ER guided bombs, hitting Russian command posts and missile artillery depots near the village of Chelberda. This wasn't just retaliation, it was a declaration that Ukraine wouldn't back down in the face of aggression. However, some military experts believe that these strikes had another goal: to pave the way for the future arrival of F-16 fighter jets. You'll find out why this was a brilliant idea later in the video. June 2024. With Russia dropping between 800 and 1,000 glide bombs on Ukraine in a single week, Ukrainian forces found themselves in a desperate struggle to counter this overwhelming assault. Sure, they weren't able to defend against the Russian glide bombs, however they could strike Russian targets with glide bombs of their own. That's why the Ukrainian Air Force pivoted to transform its fleet of surviving MiG-29s and Su-27s into precision strike platforms. By equipping these aircraft with US-made small-diameter bombs, SDMs, they sought to turn the tide. These 290-pound bombs, with a range of 69 miles thanks to satellite guidance and pop-out wings, would enable Ukrainian pilots to engage multiple targets in a single sortie while minimizing exposure to Russian defenses. Each MiG, armed with SDMs worth $40,000 apiece, represented a newfound capability, allowing Ukraine to strike back with precision and efficiency. However, the grim reality still lingered. Despite the innovation and determination, the supply of SDBs and other munitions remained critically low. While France pledged 50 Armament Air Sol Modulaire glide bombs monthly, and the US provided some additional JDAMs from the $41 million contract signed in early 2023, the numbers fell short against Russia's industrial capacity, which could produce 3,000 glide bomb kits every month. This staggering production allowed Russia to zero in on another target, the Donetsk Oblast in eastern Ukraine. As always, these attacks had little regard for civilian lives, so a single attack on June 27th resulted in several civilian casualties in Toretsk, Selyadova, and the village of Yasenova. In Selyadova, located some 9 miles from the front line in the Pokrovsk district, 7 high-rise buildings, 5 houses, 3 administrative buildings, and 4 cars were also damaged. August 2024. In one of the boldest moves since the invasion of Ukraine started, the Ukrainian forces launched an incursion into Russia's Kursk Oblast on August 6, where they clashed with the Russian armed forces and Russian border guard. According to Russia, at least 1,000 Ukrainian troops crossed the border on the first day, supported by tanks and armored vehicles, forcing the country to declare a state of emergency in the Kursk Oblast and rush reserves to the area. Unsurprisingly, this courageous move also triggered Russia to add another target to its ever-growing list of military objectives, the Kursk Oblast. The more Ukraine advanced in the region, the more glide bombs fell on it. As Ukraine's unprecedented incursion entered its third week, the country's troops captured almost 500 square miles of Russian territory and 100 settlements. Russia, for its part, dropped 27 glide bombs in a single day. Russia also started shelling the border settlements in Ukraine's Sumy Oblast, which borders the Kursk Oblast. In response, the Ukrainian authorities started devising a plan to evacuate around 45,000 residents from the region. This move was the only viable option, as Russia started intensifying the attacks, targeting this region as many as 88 times in a single day, August 22nd, causing 209 explosions in the area. September 2024. Reports started emerging that Ukraine embarked on an ambitious project to create domestically produced glide bombs, transforming Soviet-era munitions into precision weapons, just as the Russians had done. By September 2024, Ukrainian engineers had achieved a major breakthrough, successfully testing a new glide bomb designed for their Su-24 bombers. Modeled after Western weapons like the French Hammer, these glide bombs featured GPS guidance systems and tail-mounted rocket boosters, allowing them to achieve ranges of up to 40 miles. Of course, it will take time before factories can mass-produce these munitions at the scale required to match Russia's devastating glide bombing campaign. Unfortunately, in the meantime, Russia will also continue to terrorize Ukrainian cities and regions with glide bombs, as it did throughout September. In a single week, from September 16th to 22nd, Russia launched over 1,000 aerial weapons against Ukraine, according to Zelensky. This number included over 900 guided bombs. On September 29th, Russia targeted the city of Zaporizhia in southeast Ukraine, some 31 miles from the front lines. The overnight attack with glide bombs injured at least 16 civilians and destroyed multiple residential buildings. This attack was particularly sinister, as Zaporizhia had previously become a haven for Ukrainian civilians fleeing the fighting in the east. Seems like Russia never misses an opportunity to prove its commitment to targeting the most vulnerable among the Ukrainian population. October 2024. The same old relentless aggression. By mid-October, Zelensky reported that Russia had unleashed approximately 900 guided aerial bombs in just 1 week. And as if this horrifying figure wasn't enough, it also launched 40 missiles and 400 combat drones of varying types. The sheer scale of the bombardments painted a vivid picture of a nation adamant to inflict maximum damage on Ukrainian infrastructure and civilians alike. But then something changed. November 2024. November began as a continuation of the same grim pattern seen throughout the fall. Russian forces continued to launch an onslaught of glide bombs day after day. The most notable attack took place on November 11th, when glide bombs, drones, and a ballistic missile struck cities across southern and eastern Ukraine, killing at least 6 civilians and injuring 30 others. Zelensky condemned these attacks as part of a calculated Russian strategy to terrorize civilians and erode their resolve. "Every day, every night, Russia commits the same terror," the Ukrainian president said, emphasizing that civilian targets were becoming increasingly frequent victims of Moscow's indiscriminate warfare. Amid the chaos, a glimmer of hope came from Australia's delivery of JDAM-ER glide bomb kits. This delivery came as part of a massive $168 million military aid package Australia announced back in July. Since the war began, Australia has sent over $1 billion in aid, with nearly $870 million in military support alone. It's a big commitment, and this latest delivery shows that Australia is not backing down anytime soon. The JDAM-ERs were taken from Australia's Royal Air Force Reserves, which had stopped using them in 2021. Though the exact number of JDAMs supplied was unclear, their arrival marked a significant enhancement to Ukraine's arsenal, even as the country continued to face relentless attacks. But in a matter of days, these attacks seemed to lose some steam. In fact, Russian-guided aerial bombs dropped by more than 50%. November 20th marked the last time Russia targeted Ukraine with more than 100 bombs in a single day, 138 to be exact. So what happened? Did Russia have a change of heart, suddenly feeling remorse for its brutal bombardments? Of course not. No, Russia simply got scared. You see, on November 17th, President Joe Biden finally gave Ukraine the green light to use Western-supplied long-range weapons to target Russian soil. And just like that, Ukraine was hitting back harder than ever. US-made ATACMS missiles and British Storm Shadows showed Russia exactly what it felt like to be on the receiving end of relentless attacks. But Ukraine didn't let up. Even with 50% fewer glide bombs, hundreds were still raining down, each one devastating in its own right. So Ukraine made it known that the country was, in fact, planning to level the playing field. Anatoly Barlievich, chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, straight up confirmed reports that Ukraine was building its own guided aerial bombs. "We are actively working on it. I think we will achieve such success," he boldly reported on November 24th, making it clear that Ukraine wasn't planning on solely surviving. December 2024. Fewer and fewer glide bombs were falling on Ukrainian cities. The daily total dipped below 50, with only 5 out of 12 days topping this number. By the end of the month, the daily average was 40 or fewer. It seemed that Russia became too preoccupied with keeping its aircraft out of range of Ukraine's deadly long-range missiles to maintain its bombardment. ATACMS and Storm Shadows were hitting Russian military airfields, forcing Russian bombers like the Su-34 to retreat over 370 miles from the front lines. This strategic shift drastically slowed their ability to launch their devastating attacks, significantly crippling Russian airstrike operations. January 2025. The new year brought additional relief to Ukraine. In some areas of the country, there were as many as 70% fewer attacks than in the summer. On many days, Russia would only launch a handful of these deadly munitions. At this time, analysts offered another possible explanation for this drastic change: F-16 fighter jets we mentioned earlier. These jets had their combat debut in August, but their presence was now starting to really make a difference. Russian pilots, once bold in their attack, were now thinking twice before flying too close to the border. Why? Because those F-16s aren't just for show, they are a real threat in the skies. But regardless of the reason behind the decline in glide bomb strikes, one thing's for sure: it might be New Year, but Ukraine shouldn't be popping any champagne just yet. Russia's glide bombs still represent a major problem. These precision-guided munitions might be flying less frequently, but when they do hit, they deliver massive damage. Ukraine's attacks on Russian airfields and ammo depots have helped reduce the number of glide bombs, but these tactics are a temporary fix at best. Yehor Chernev, a member of Ukraine's parliament, summed it up: "It's still a problem for us because we cannot intercept these guided bombs." And while Russia's glide bomb strikes may have decreased, they haven't vanished. Just a few weeks into 2025, Russia launched a deadly attack on Zaporizhia, killing more than a dozen civilians and injuring over 30. This reminds Ukraine and the world that despite the decrease in attacks, these bombs are still out there, waiting to strike when least expected. With all these deaths and injuries of innocent people piling up, a single question arises: can glide bombs win the war in Ukraine for either party? The answer is more complicated than it seems. Glide bombs, with all their destructive power, are just one part of a much larger picture. These weapons are no doubt terrifying, but the war will not be won by terror alone. The real outcome will be shaped by simpler, more traditional means. It will come down to the gritty essentials: who can keep their troops supplied and who can withstand the relentless grind of attrition. What do you think? Which side will prevail? And what kind of role will glide bombs continue to have in the war after the introduction of long-range attacks? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Now go and check out Ukraine uses ancient Roman weapon to stop the Russians, or click this other video instead.